Okay, this is 2.6, solving problems involving quadratic relations. I'm just going to give you a little video support here, and I chose an example that will be like the practice questions that you'll be doing in this section. We're using all of our knowledge that we've learned about the quadratic functions and their characteristics to solve real-world problems. So this is one question here. A cannonball is shot into the air. Its height can be described by the equation h is equal to -3 times t minus 1 times t minus 9, where h is the height in feet and t is the time in seconds. So the first question here is, what are the zeros of this relation? So for zeros, remember another word that describes zeros in quadratic is our x-intercepts. To find our x-intercepts, we need the equation to be factored. So we need the equation to be factored. Okay, so we need the equation to be factored. Lucky for us, our equation is already factored. So our factored equation that we have is -3 times t minus 1 times t minus 9. Now to find our zeros, remember, if we were to look on the graph, our zeros are here, where they cross the x-axis, the x-intercepts. If you look, remember that the y value, or in our case it's h, but the height is equal to 0. So to figure out what they are, let your equation equal to 0. When it's in its factored form and it's equal to 0, you can let each of the factors equal to 0 to solve. So our one factor, t minus 1, is equal to 0, or t minus 9 is equal to 0. Bring your -1 over to the other side, it becomes +1. Bring your -9 over to the other side, and it becomes +9. And we have our two x-intercepts at 1 and 9. Therefore, the zeros, or x-intercepts, are now you can write them as t minus 1 or t minus 9, or you can write them as a point. I'll write them as a point. So the zeros are 1, 0 and 9, 0. Okay, what do the zeros mean in this situation? So this is a cannonball that has been shot in the air and it lands on the ground. So if you think of this as the ground and this is the height, our zeros in this case are where it's on the ground. Okay, so the zeros, what do the zeros mean in this situation? The zeros represent when the cannonball hits the ground. Now remember that when you're answering questions like this, to use complete sentences and to really convey what you mean, so I can give you full marks. The next question, what is the axis of symmetry and what does it represent? Remember that the axis of symmetry is where it cuts the graph in half. So if this is a graph, our axis of symmetry will go right down the middle. So to find our axis of symmetry, like I said, it's right in the middle. Okay, so the axis of symmetry cuts the parabola in half. To find out what it is, we know our zeros. We know our zeros occur at 1 and 9. That means that our axis of symmetry will be directly in between our two zeros. So therefore, axis of symmetry lies in between our zeros. So our zeros are 1 and 9. T equals 1 and t equals 9. To find your axis of symmetry, you can find the midpoint. So to find the midpoint, you can add them up and divide by 2. So 1 plus 9 divided by 2, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So our axis of symmetry is at 5. Therefore, axis of symmetry is at x equals 5. So it is the line x equals 5 that cuts the parabola in half. It says, what does it represent? The axis of symmetry, because it cuts it in half, will give it the maximum or the minimum value of your parabola. So in this case, since our parabola is opening downwards, it will give us the maximum value. So the axis of symmetry is x equals 5, and it represents the time that the max height occurs. So it will tell us at x equals 5, if you look up here, this little graph, at x equals 5, this is where the maximum height will occur. Okay, last question of this one. Use the axis of symmetry to find the vertex and explain what the vertex means for the cannonball. So I'll do a little drawing again. So if these are our two zeros at 1 and 9, we know that our axis of symmetry occurs at x equals 5. So that's 5 right there. We want to find the vertex. What is the vertex? So the vertex, of course, has an x and a y value. We know the x value of our vertex is 5. Okay, so we know the x value of the vertex is 5. So we know that it's 5, and we don't know the y value. So to find the y value, or actually in our case, it's an h value because it's height, we just need to sub 5 in for our t value, and then we can solve for h. So sub t equals 5 into equation and solve for h. So our equation is h equals -3 t minus 1 t minus 9. So we have our t value. We know that our vertex will occur at 5. So we can plug 5 in for t and we can solve for h. So -3, we'll put in our 5 for our t, 5 for our t again, and then solve. So first solve for your brackets. 5 minus 1 is 4. 5 minus 9 is -4. We have, let's see here, we have -3 times 4 is -12 times -4. Negative 12 times negative 4 is positive 48. So we have an h of 48. That means that our height here is 48. So therefore, the vertex is 548. The point that the vertex occurs is 548. Now it says, explain what the vertex means for the cannonball. The vertex, of course, is the highest point that the cannonball will reach, the highest height. Therefore, the vertex tells us that the cannonball reaches a max height of 48 meters at 5 seconds. Okay, so that's an example of an application problem. Good luck with your practice exercise and use the answer key to check your answers.